Presenters today are Franny Gata from Carilion Hospice, and Dr. Erin Hayes, who is a resident physician with the Department of Psychiatry. And I am going to turn it over to them to get started talking about the Soul Survivor program. So thank you all very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to learn about our Soul Survivors program. So I will try to be mindful of time and not talk fast, but our objectives for today are to bring awareness and education of our Soul Survivors program to our healthcare professionals. We are very aware that this program, although it has been around since 2016, is not known to a lot of our healthcare professionals, and so we are very passionate about bringing this program to the community and wanted and welcomed and thank Alex for letting us be a part of this. Our program is a 8-week, and I'm going to kind of jump around, so I apologize, but our program is an 8-week psychoeducational program. And so one of the things that we want to discuss, and Dr. Hayes will do that, will be the benefits of Soul Survivors. Our referral process is pretty simple. We move to the referral process with the Carilion Direct, and that number is at the back of the screen, though actually one of the last slides. The mission for our Soul Survivor program is to provide grieving families education, support, and validation as they move through their grief experience. We've incorporated a flyer for you to have with both our previous spring program but our upcoming fall program, so that you will have that in case you would like to refer any families. Some history. In 2015, Hospice was fortunate enough to consult with Donna Sherman, who is Director Emeritus with the Dougy Center. And during that time, we had the privilege of learning from Donna and how to launch our Soul Survivor program. During that time in 2016, when we launched Soul Survivors, the group was an open grief support group, and after the first year of piloting that, we decided it made better sense in our community to offer a closed group twice a year. In partnership with John M. Oakey Funeral Home, we brought Donna Sherman to the Roanoke Valley in October, and at that time we both educated ourselves more in the formatting of grief support groups, but also our healthcare staff and other professionals in the community wanting to learn about serving bereaved children. And we we're fortunate enough to attract professionals from both the educational world and our hospital staff as well, working with children and families that are bereaved. And then in 2016, which was a big year for us, we were able to initiate and launch our Soul Survivors program, which was an extension of our Carilion Clinic Hospice's Camp Treehouse. We were no longer able to provide that service due to community need, and kind of modified and came back with this kind of 8-week program that we offer twice a year, and being dedicated to serving our community's bereavement needs. What is Soul Survivors? As I said in the first slide as an objective, it is an 8-week psychoeducational grief support group for families. That being said, all persons, families who come to this group are screened. I, being a licensed clinical social worker, spend about 30 minutes to an hour talking to the family over the phone. And by family, I've identified whoever the guardian is. We'll spend time talking to them about their needs. I get some history. I find out who it is that died. What are their coping skills? Are they receiving any other community resources such as therapy? A lot of our referrals come from the community in lay of therapists or school systems. We do not charge for this service. We are fortunate enough that hospice is able to pay. We provide the finances to run Soul Survivors in addition to area foundations that have been kind and generous with donating to us, as well as 2 local funeral homes that are huge supporters of this program. Our groups are led by professionals in the field of social work, psychology, medicine, bereavement, and personal experience. We follow the rule of 3 by meaning we have 3 facilitators in each group, and that changes depending on the amount of kids in the group. So if we have 2 kids, we're not going to have 2 staff leading that group. But we do believe in the rule of 3. In case a facilitator is not able to make it, we will always have consistency and continuity with those facilitators. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hayes, who's going to speak about the benefits of grief support groups. So here's Dr. Hayes.
All right, thank you, Franny. My name's Erin Hayes, and I'm a first-year child and adolescent psychiatry fellow here at Carilion in the Department of Psychiatry, and it was my pleasure to volunteer for the first time this year with Soul Survivors as a group leader for a teen group. I believe we had teens for late adolescents from like 6th through 8th grade. And it was a great opportunity to kind of meet other professionals who are in the field. Myself and several other resident physicians, and I believe a medical student too, volunteered some of our time, 2 medical students in this program. So as you can imagine, there are a great many benefits in having children and their families participate in grief support groups. They offer emotional and physical support in a safe and non-judgmental environment. They find that they're able to gain support and understanding from others who have been through a similar loss. And it really helps begin the healing process through being able to share your own story and hearing the stories of others. One thing that we really try to impart are coping skills to help children and their families through the difficult days of their grief journey, and you know, form relationships and find companionship with people who really seem to get it and understand firsthand what you're going through. Some of the other opportunities are discovering new traditions and ideas to help keep loved ones present in your hearts and in your memories, increasing understanding of how children and other family members react to loss. And it also gives children and their families permission to grieve and permission to live a happy, productive life. And we have some videos here through childrengrieve.org. We had the first one's from Donna Sherman, who we mentioned earlier in the presentation from the Dougie Center. And we'll pull that up in just a moment.
I think a lot of people don't recognize how deeply children are affected by the death of someone in their life. Whether it's a parent, a sibling, a close friend, we have this idea children are resilient. And they are resilient, but they're not resilient in a vacuum. There are ways in which we can help them navigate the loss. We have not recognized as a society that children who are not supported in grieving and in understanding what happened and in being allowed to be sad, being allowed to be in pain, that the implications of unaddressed grief will come back later in their lives when it's not addressed in childhood.
Grief is a normal human experience that humankind has had since the beginning of time. Since we've been humans, we experience grief. It is a reaction to loss when we lose someone or something that we love. Sort of, it's a reaction to that transition, to that change. And It's so important that we remain mindful that this is not a pathology. It's a part of who we are as humans. We grieve when we lose those things that we love, those things that were part of our routine, those things that we relied on, things that were part of creating a sense of consistency and ritual in our daily lives. When those things change, we react to it, and grief is part of that reaction. And it's so important that we remember that it's not just an emotional experience, but it's also a physical experience. That grief is also physical. So you've got the emotional, you have the physical. It's also spiritual, that we're trying to make meaning out of the loss. We're trying to understand why this happened, how did it happen, and some really big questions come along with that. And it's also an intellectual experience, and because it's an intellectual experience, the child is going to think about and understand that grief in different ways throughout their developmental trajectory. That 5-year-old who experiences death at 5, they're going to reprocess it and they're going to think about it differently throughout every developmental milestone as they're able to understand and process and have different feelings and evolving feelings around the death itself as they start to see and understand themselves in the world in new ways, as they sculpt and define their own life purpose. Really, they forge meaning out of their life story and out of the loss itself. You know, what's really interesting is that they don't have the words to fully articulate the feelings and that grief experience. So we know as adults that it's really hard to find the words to define what we're feeling. Well, it's particularly hard for kids to associate this word equals this thing that's going on inside of me. So oftentimes, kids are using play, they're using art, they're using whatever modalities that are part of their normal life to help them express themselves and tell their story. So it's important that we create a supportive environment around children so that they are empowered to experiment with, to learn, to touch, to try to understand what it is that's going on inside of them, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and have opportunities to express it in ways that are healthy. In the ideal world, we need to make a cultural, systemic shift as a community in how we think about grieving kids. We need to change the support system. We need to change the resources that are available to grieving children. We need to have support systems accessible to every child so that they know that they're not alone and that they develop the coping skills that they need in order to live a healthy and productive life. And as a society, if we can make that shift and we can have open and honest conversations about the emotional needs of children, about our mortality, about the fact that nothing is forever, and despite that difficult reality, we can take care of each other, we can love each other, we can affirm each other, and we can set up children to have a lifelong experience and put them on a trajectory where they can be healthy, they can know that they're not alone, and that they can discover in themselves that they're capable of great things and that the future is bright.
So Soul Survivors is one of those resources to provide the children with that type of necessary support while they're grieving. We are formatted in the sense of providing grades for the children. So by that I mean we have grades kindergarten through 2nd, which is a group. We have grades 3rd through 5th, which is a group. Our 3rd group, and that was the group I think Dr. Hayes mentioned that she was facilitating, are the junior high kids, which are 6 to 8, and then 6th through 8th grade, and then we have 9th through 12th. And so that's how we break up the children in formatting and providing them a class that is able to meet their needs, as well as the guardians that come with them. And the guardians can be grandparents. They can be foster parents, adoptive parents, a neighbor, anyone who is willing to come and bring the child and learn what grief looks like in the child. When we teach the parents, the guardians, we focus on what grief looks like in the child. We do touch on their grief, but that's not this type of group. This group is to learn how to support and help their grieving child teen. We do allow the kids to repeat because, as Joe Primo had said, I mean, developmentally, children move through grief, and it looks different as a second grader opposed to a 10th grader. So we have had children repeat, which again, we are fine with. That puts pressure on us to always change up our groups because we don't want kids coming through who come through often learning. They learn the same thing. The goal is the same, but with our creative facilitators, they deliver it differently. So the repeating child is not going to have that same experience every time they come or every session they come. Because we've changed it up with the primary goal of addressing their needs. One of the things that we do at the end of our program is the last night we try to have a family gathering where we're not in separate groups. We pull everyone together. And you can see on our last slide with questions, and I'm just going to skip to it and then come back to it, cake. And this is one of many sweets we've provided at the end for our families. And in that time, we do an art activity together. And so the parents are able to see some of the work the children have done. And the children can also learn and see what their parents or guardians have experienced and able to meet their needs and learned about what their grief may look like as a grieving 16-year-old. One of the stories that have come, and we have many stories, but there is a story that occurred in our last group that I find to be really very touching. We had a young, I think he's 17-year-old boy, and he created a flower. We did a flower garden, and we had an art therapist who had volunteered, and she led it. And he it seemed like he was working so long on this. He created a white rose boutonniere, and he was very articulate and focused on what he was doing. And at the end, when everyone was finished creating, we allowed time for people to share. And he's very introverted and did not share when we, made time and called people up as they raised their hands to share. And I'd say literally 10 minutes before the group we were getting ready to dismiss for our final session, he quietly came up to me and asked me, could he share? And so we pulled everybody back together to give him the respect, and he shared the boutonniere, and he held it up with pipe cleaners, and he was so detailed and so creative it actually looked like a real boutonniere. And he said, my brother died by suicide, as he held it up, and he said, I was a pallbearer in the funeral, and we had white roses to wear on our collar. And then his speech sped up, and he said, and my father didn't know what it meant to me, and he threw it in the trash. But I created a new one, and he held it up for everybody to see. And to me, that showed him, soul survivors taught him that even though he was going through that, even though his father took that, he found a coping skill. He could help himself by creating a new one, and that was something that he cherished. And the fact that we provided him a safe place to feel comfortable enough to share, and even the last few minutes of having courage to come up and speak to everyone. I believe that soul survivors and the wonderful facilitators that help us helped him to get to that. And our facilitators are fabulous. We do pull people. We've had teachers help. We have therapists, both licensed and unlicensed. We have med students. We have physicians who are in the psychiatric residency help, such as Dr. Hayes, and it has just been a wonderful collaboration with our outpatient and inpatient clinics and helping support our children. I do want to bring attention to other grief support groups. I mentioned that Soul Survivors does not focus on the guardians grief, because it is about the children and supporting them, but we do offer other resources for them. We have our Journey of Hope support group that meets at Carilion Clinic Hospice. There are 4 6-week psychoeducational closed groups that are offered by our hospice bereavement coordinator, who has many years of experience and really, really diligently takes to heart facilitating the needs of grieving adults. We have our Journey of Hope 2, which is an open group that I coordinate and facilitate with other hospice staff, as well as Carilion chaplains, other professionals within our agency who want to help and give back. The Journey of Hope 1 persons, when they graduate and after 6 weeks, they are always invited to Journey of Hope 2, as well as people in the community who want to find out about us and want grief support. No fee for any of these groups. We also screen them as well. And then we have our parent support group, which is another open psychoeducational group that meets twice a month, and the focus is on supporting grieving parents who've experienced the death of a child 17 and a half and up. So most of these parents have experienced the death of their adult child. And then we have our suicide support group that meets about once a year. It's an 8-week group, closed, psychoeducational, and then our soul survivors, which will pick back up in September. And we right now are meeting twice a year, primarily because of the numbers. A lot of people in the community agencies who would be referring don't really know about us, but we are getting the word out, and thanks to Alex for inviting us to do that as one way to help us get the word out so we can help grieving families and their children.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I know that's a lot to pack into 30 minutes. So we actually have a couple of minutes left, and I know that there's a lot of questions, and we've got all the brains here that we need in order to answer all these questions, right? So I've got an office full, so I know you guys can answer some of these. So we're on speaker, so you don't have to wear the headset. Just kind of stay close to the phone here. Let's start by going over just really fast again how a professional might make a referral to the Soul Survivor program, or what it takes, what resources they need to go through.
A phone call to Carilion Direct, and that number is listed on the next to the last screen, which is 1-800-422-8482, and they are trained. They know the lingo.
There are 14 parties in conference, including you.
When a caller, I'm sorry about that, when a caller calls through, and then the calls get directed in a spreadsheet to Kathy Struble and I, and Kathy Struble is the coordinator also with Soul Survivors, and then together we call the families, and then we screen them, and they get an application. No one gets an application until we talk to them. Because we want to make sure this is the best resource for their family.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so very quickly, tell me again how this program is funded, who supports it, and is it purely a Carilion endeavor, Carilion Hospice, or are you getting outside funds, stuff like that?
It is purely a Carilion Hospice endeavor. It is our Carilion Hospice bereavement program. We have written requests to area foundations in the community. Kathy Struble and I did that last year, and we were fortunate enough to get 2 foundation donations, and then the 2 local funeral homes, Oakey's Funeral Home and John M. Oakey and Son, who support us. And the fee, the money that we get primarily goes to food. I failed to let you guys know we start at 6 o'clock, and we provide a meal, and so we feed all the families that come through, and then at 6:30 we break out into our class ending at 7:30. So the bulk of the funds go to the food and then supplies.
That's perfect. I think, one, you can always get more people when there's food present, but it also takes away one of those probably excuses for not coming.
Absolutely.
Is that they don't have to worry about that piece. So that's really smart on your part. Tell me quickly about the number of children that you've served, and are you seeing a growth in that, a decline in that, and are you trying to get more children kind of enrolled in the program? Tell me about your numbers and your volume.
This is Kathy Struble. We have, since 2016, approximately 75 children who have graduated the program. And that's representative of about 39 families. We have seen children's needs from everything from trauma-related deaths, such as homicide, suicide, sudden motor vehicle accidents, and then also we're also seeing rising numbers of grandparents raising their grandchildren due to opioid overdoses. So we have not developed any specialty groups for children because we've learned right now, as to date, that we can bring children in. We're not focused so much on how the person in their life has died, but that they've all have experienced a loss. And focused on that is many of them, the children have shared that when they're in school, that they have experienced that their classmates don't understand them, and that they have a hard time connecting. But when they come to Soul Survivors, and one of the other costs that we have are the T-shirts. You don't get the T-shirt until you graduate Soul Survivor, and that's a big day. That is a big day for the kids and for the adults. That pulls us together on that final day.
And the T-shirts Kathy is mentioning are Carilion blue tie-dyed. We had a artist actually who kind of helped create the T-shirts, and so they're lovely. Like, you don't want to wear it just one-time T-shirts. They're actually kind of cool. They're a little hot, but they're cool T-shirts. Yeah.
Okay, we're actually a little bit over, so I know this is a short, bite-sized little segment. You guys are going to be coming back in the not too near distant future for a grand round session, we're hoping. I know Sharon Parker and I were talking about how can we get you guys a longer format. So if anyone has any questions for the group, you can always email us at outreach@CarilionClinic.org, and I can get them over to the group here. With that, really fast for housekeeping items, remember you get 0.5 hours of Category 1 AMA PRA credit. You can claim that by going, if you're listening to this as a live recording, going into your calendar appointment and clicking on the CME survey link. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can just go to the Show More Notes section and you'll see the CME survey there. Remember to sign up for our Carilion Children's CME outreach email list so that you can get all of these emails and calendar appointments for the live sessions and the recorded sessions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you ever have any questions about how much CME credit you have, you can go to CarilionClinic.org/CME and go through the Carilion CME tracker system, and you'll see all the hours that you've done with Carilion CME department. With that, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the phone lines now. Sorry we didn't have time to open up the phone lines, but I had lots of questions I wanted to ask, and I know you guys may have some too, so feel free to email us and I can continue the discussion offline. So thank you all very much for joining us. Have a great afternoon.